Okay, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with Space Roll 2000 with Nintendo. They showed a bunch of demos and such to show the GameCube's power, as well as some stuff that was sort of beta for upcoming games, and other things that later inspired or turned it into future titles, and other things that were just kind of left out, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So what was always meant to be not that big of a deal, and just mainly demos to show off graphical powers. Space World itself is very interesting to go back and look at. And Super Smash Bros. Melee came out a year after Space World 2000, and it had a shorter development time. It was kind of rushed, but came out accidentally great. Well, maybe not accidentally, but you know. And it has a lot of mysterious little interesting elements to it. The whole entire development process of Melee is just fascinating. And the design choices they made and all of the little extra tidbits that came up in there. And the representation of some of Nintendo's more obscure stuff. And that includes Space Roll 2000. And there are three immediate big things from Space Roll 2000 that are just left over in Melee and preserved. And the biggest one, of course, is Ganondorf's sword. Now, the original thing was just Ganondorf fighting Link, and Ganondorf had his own sword with him. It's a very short clip that didn't lead to a game or anything, and it's unknown who exactly designed all of that and decided to give Ganondorf a sword, but it was a cool little scene. And Ganondorf was added to Melee as an extra character, including Captain Falcon. But one thing that many people found pretty egregious is that the game displayed him with a sword in both his unlock screen and his trophy, which is based off some of his character artwork, and also his victory screen. And inside that, he is wielding his sword, but it's never used in gameplay. And there, of course, were rumors back then that you could use the sword, but those never came to fruition. And this became very iconic since he just fought like Captain Falcon, and people were like, he has a sword, why doesn't he use that? Except Ganondorf never really had a cool looking sword in any of the past solo titles. And I almost feel like a lot of this could have been what led up to him having a sword to duel with in Twilight Princess when he took the Sage's sword. And then of course in Brawl, and he still doesn't use it. In Smash 4, it's used as part of a custom move, but who really cares? And I almost feel like this too could have inspired Hyrule Warriors, where Ganondorf originally just had two dual swords as his weapons. Of course, he looks a lot like Demise in that game, but this could have helped lead to it before they eventually gave him the Trident 2 that he normally has. And of course, it finally all came in a 180 in Smash Bros. Ultimate, where Ganondorf is back in his Ocarina of Time design. And he finally uses his sword in Smash attacks, and it's the sword based off the Space Roll demo. And everybody loved it. It's just pretty cool how what was meant to be a meaningless thing just somehow snuck its way into Melee's development, and it ended up becoming an iconic item to the point where now it exists in an actual game and is used in it. And this leads me to another thing that I want to talk about that Melee has in reference to Space World is Super Mario 128. And that was a demo that eventually became Pikmin. But it almost looked like a normal game itself, which is interesting. And Melee, of course, has an event called that, where you KO 128 tiny little Marios, and it's hilarious. But I almost feel like that maybe they could have thought that it was becoming a game at some point, and they just had that as a reference because of Melee's development cycle, but I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure. A lot of this is just theorizing. However, I do think that it's really cool that what could have just been a forgotten demo is now preserved forever inside that game. And the next thing I want to talk about, which is smaller than the other two, is Meowth's Trophy. And Meowth's Trophy in there is specifically revolved around Meowth's party, not just Meowth himself. And Meowth's party was another demo at Space World. I believe it got into Pokemon Channel somehow, but it wasn't the same thing. And you got Meowth rocking out in a guitar. and that's now preserved through Meaningless trophies. And another interesting side note I just want to add, it's rumored, it's not fully confirmed like a few other characters, but it's rumored that Meowth was considered to be playable in the first game. And if that's true, he's the only considered or flat out planned character who still has not made a playable role yet. And poor little kitty. But while I went over the Space Road stuff, mostly I do want to go over some extra little details while I'm at it. And it mainly has to do with Meaningless trophies, and there's just always been something about Meaningless trophies that have been really interesting to me, because a lot of them were like 3D models created based on characters who were just like sprites or something for the first time ever, and they all had this kind of like hyper-realistic look to them. And I don't know, there's something about them that always just like captured me more than the trophies in future games. I don't know if it's nostalgia with little child wonder, but who knows. And it's cool how there's always like a Luigi's Mansion trophy there, which is this new, fresh thing in there. And Luigi's Mansion was shown off at Space World a lot, and Spada's really famous there, so I can't help but be taken back to that with it. And the same goes for the Pikmin trophies. For Pikmin, it's just this like brand new game back then that nobody had really heard about yet, especially if you were a kid. And you see these mysterious Olimar trophies in Pikmin, with Olimar only being unlocked if you have the actual game. But yeah, it just like gives me this like early GameCube beta mysterious feel to it. And it's just awesome how the game was able to reserve all of this and let Space World live on and become like more known. It like this is probably part of why people wish like more of these became actual games or were more canonized. And it's great that these demos are able to live on. It's super interesting that in a mainstream game like Smash Brothers, it was just preserved. Like Melee is just like this like little great gift of like obscure Nintendo trivia from the early 2000s, early 90s, and 80s. And it's something really fascinating that I kind of wish more people talked about. And with that, I'm going to end off with this one more thing that I want to get out there, because I never knew this myself until I just like read it in a little note on the Smash Wikia. And I've never heard anybody else mention this before, but there's a certain trophy in Melee called Future Release. Well, the title is Future Release, like the Animal Crossing games, which also gave off this like mysterious vibe to them with early development cycles, like KK Slider being named Takake in that. But like that, there's a non-Animal Crossing trophy called Alpha, and if you looked at it, it's a cute panda, and nobody might not recognize this, but the game this is supposed to be for is Cube4, and while I'm sure a number of you probably have heard of it before, I doubt barely anybody played it. And it was an obscure GameCube title. There's a spirit for it in Ultimate, but what makes this especially interesting is that once you go to the main game of Cube4, Alpha's not in there. There's no creature named Alpha. The panda doesn't exist, as far as I know. So this is just a flat-out beta element for another game just left in Melee, like a whole entire character. So that's super cool on top of the other Space World stuff. And that's all about what I have to say on that. Thank you.